What's more important, the journey or the destination? Actually, it's the company. Journey to Well, the podcast, was birthed with the intention to cultivate relationships. You can expect a plethora of conversations on nervous system regulation, breathwork, human design and astrology, cycle alignment, energy and spirituality, and honestly, so much more. But the heart of this community is to witness the journey back home to ourselves, rediscovering our innate power within. I couldn't be more honored to take this journey with you. Be well, my friend, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, welcome back to the podcast Journey to Well. So I'm Hannah. Today I'm talking with Steve. I was laughing with him earlier. I've been listening to his podcast. So I'm like, I feel like we've been hanging out the past few days. So it's nice to have an actual live conversation with you. But this is Steve. He is obviously a podcaster, The Neuro's Journey, talking a lot about nervous system regulation, healing trauma, really all of the things that I absolutely love chatting about. We're also going to talk a little human design. He's a 4/6 ego authority projector, and a lot of cool stuff to talk about there too, Steve. But first, if you wouldn't mind giving a little introduction, who is Steve? Give us a little background on your story and your journey so far in this beautiful life.
Thanks, Hannah. I really appreciate being on. Steve Sapourn. My podcast is called The Neuro's Journey. It's a relatively new endeavor for me. I started it last year and really shifted up my whole career after a 30-year career in finance to engage in talking with people about just the journey of life. And, mine had significant early childhood trauma. Which at this point has turned out to be a blessing for me, but was very challenging for most of my life. As I got into adulthood, I exhibited the characteristics of somebody that's had a lot of trauma. Oftentimes we become very good at business, and so I was an entrepreneur and I was good in that realm. And very often you become drug addicts, which I also was. I was also very good at that. And really, as I started to learn, it took me decades, really until my late 40s, to even understand that, like, what trauma was and that I had it, and orienting around kind of healing my nervous system, and really making it a choice and making it identified with my version of masculinity. So the way that I approach being a man now, it used to be very outside oriented, make money, do this, provide, which of course I'm all for. But now the way I orient it is I make the choice on a daily basis to sort of go inside and make sure that what is coming out of me energetically is of benefit to the people around me and is actually supportive of them and of me. And so that's my definition of it. And as I've moved through different stages, I still do a lot of the regulatory practices for the nervous system, but I feel like I have regulated a very dysregulated nervous system. And I have a lot of tips and just experience sharing of how I did that for myself, and I've done a lot of research on it. And then what comes up after that? There's a big field of study on post-traumatic growth, and really a lot of people who've had really difficult experiences, their ceilings are higher for a lot of things that were challenging for them. So I feel like I'm in that phase and super blessed to get to talk with people like you and just explore these topics. And I'm really excited to talk about human design. I really only tapped into it once, like 5 years ago. So I'm interested to have you tell me, my life through that lens. And yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You're reminding me, one of the things that we talk about a lot in breath work is when you clear and you allow yourself to feel like the really heavy emotions or dense emotions like grief, sadness, anger, frustration, rage, when you allow yourself to like create that space down here, you also, what goes up must come down and what goes down must come up, right? So you're also creating a lot of space for your ability to feel elated, to feel pleasure, to feel joy, to feel peace, to feel calm. And so that like post-traumatic, what did you call it? Sorry.
Post-traumatic growth.
Growth, yeah, the post-traumatic growth, that kind of small, on a smaller level, relates to what we talk about in breathwork too, is like, because you've experienced such a depth, then you also are able to experience such a high of life, and like feeling those lighter emotions too, which I would imagine that a lot of people don't arrive to, or don't maybe feel that they can arrive to. And so I love your mission. I love your podcast and your message and just your story. And I'm curious if we can start with your addiction journey, mostly because when I think about trauma, and you're like, it makes sense, like addiction kind of comes like, that's a typical flow. People that have experienced a lot of trauma, addiction can be one of those coping mechanisms. And I'm going to open that up to drugs, sex, shopping, like not just a drug addiction, but in your research and in your experience, why does that happen when we experience a lot of trauma as a child? Why does that typical path lead to some sort of addiction in young adulthood or adulthood?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to answer that. One thing I just want to comment on your last comment about when you plumb those depths, you also get this elation. And I think some of it is you can't choose what you suppress. So I told you I had a bunch of trauma. I also had a really loving mother that really kind of saved my life.
Wow.
And I don't think you get to pick and choose. So as I was suppressing and not feeling those things, I was also dampening down my ability to really show love and be as loving as
Mm.
side of me. And I think on the addiction level, I mean, there are multiple things. So the way I look at the nervous system is it adapts, right? So some people, if they're anxious, you're kind of more future oriented, right? And your nervous system is ramped up, and
Mm.
that's an uncomfortable state. But you could also have the same. You could have a siblings in the same house, and your brother or sister, instead of being anxious, they could be depressed, and
Mm.
their nervous system sort of ramps down. And either way, you're not really comfortable in the present moment, right? And oftentimes, you think that there's something bad or innately wrong about you.
Mm.
And so you use these substances to sort of counteract for what is not there. So I was a very numbed out person. I just did not want to be in the present moment. And so I used a lot of cocaine because it helped me to like get a feeling of what like being emotional was like. I mean, it's, if you've ever done it, it's like blabbing and I love, and all this kind of like vibe to it. And I think I was, counteracting for what I really didn't feel that I had because I was not comfortable being alone with myself. And honestly, my nervous system was difficult to deal with. And it was uncomfortable.
Mm.
So I had a level of sensation, I think, that we all sort of feel, like anxiety. I would characterize it on my worst days as if you've ever had a near miss auto accident and your system is revved up all day. That
Yeah.
was an oncoming sensation that was like a weekly deal for me.
Mm.
So, at 10 a.m., I wasn't really feeling like that. And I wasn't intending on being a drug addict. But like at 3, it's like, okay, it's a little more difficult. And then at 6 or 9 p.m., I had just given in to that. And really, for me, my journey of, not being addicted, and I'm not sober, I just don't drink alcohol or do street drugs. I don't do the things that cause me a lot of problems. And I exhibit no willpower to do that because what I realized is as I focused on my nervous system and I actually regulated it with things like breath work and yoga and all kinds of different techniques, it just didn't occur to me to use those things all the time. It was a very, at the beginning of it, just a kind of unique experience to put my head down and be like, oh my God, I never thought about doing anything. It just didn't occur to me.
Wow.
And I started to realize so often that what I was doing was mollifying those feelings. And I had a really good men's group leader. And when I was just starting this process with drinking, he was like, why don't you not stop drinking now, but just take a breath before you drink and like figure out why you're doing it. And what I really realized is I didn't really love wine and appetizers and all those things at 6 o'clock. I was dealing with my sensations.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, here's some breath exercises that you could do instead of that glass of wine, or here's a way to metabolize those thoughts or whatever. And I started to learn, and of course, I was still drinking for years, but I started to learn, like, oh, I'm using it for this.
Yeah.
It's not an identity, it's not that. And eventually, I don't feel like a drug addict now because don't I don't believe in that disease model. I
Mhm.
feel like it's a dysregulated nervous system or unworthiness model that you're not willing to feel. And if you go into that, kind of resolve those things, I don't think it's a disease. I think it's just an adaptation.
Hmm. When was that? Was there like a specific moment that switched for you where you were like, this is a nervous system thing and this is what I'm going to start working on? Or was this a slow progression over time?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. I'd had really heavy drug use things that I'd stopped. I mean, I was smoking crack in my 20s and 30s for a long time. I hadn't been doing that for years. I didn't really know what trauma was until about 5 years ago, and I
Okay.
started orienting around healing it, and I was making some progress. But I was still drinking heavily and partying and those kinds of things. And I had a psychedelic experience, and actually, the content of it wasn't anything about quit drinking, but I quit drinking after it. It was really that it gave me insight into my life that, like, you have operated under this paradigm that the world is scary and dangerous and it's out to get you. Which honestly, given what was happening when I was a little kid, I mean, it was a reasonable adaptation. But I had
Mhm.
this really wise and calm voice saying, it wasn't out to get you. Those things were of your benefit. Listen to this voice, which was my intuition, which is, this voice is not begging you to do things. It's basically saying, here's the wise move. And then
Mhm.
compare it to the other voices that you listen to, which are screaming and telling, they're very fear based. And so what I started doing after that was, just anytime I had an inclination that something would be good for me, I would just do it. I live in Boulder, Colorado. There's tons of flyers. There's this
Mhm.
this thing, that thing. So I just started doing things, and I found something called circling, which is an authentic relating practice where people get together and do these things. There's no drugs or alcohol there. And I just started seeing that there's a whole world out there. And I had gotten to a place with alcohol. I took my kids to Greece for a month, and on the way home, I got so drunk on the plane that it like really scared them,
Mhm.
and I wasn't really capable of, collecting my things well. And it's the kind of thing that they're going to remember for the rest of their life. And I just was like, like, I'm really geared towards being a father, and that was something I never wanted to replicate. And the psychedelic experience just came after it, and really it just changed my identity. It was like, I don't drink, and I just
Mhm.
started doing yoga, and I started doing different things, and I started filling my life and looking for opportunities that weren't around a bunch of people trying to escape.
Yeah.
So, a lot of what circling is like, what am I feeling now? It's like, Hannah,
Mhm.
you say something to me, and I say, well, what I'm feeling is this. So it just started to shift. And it'll be 4 years since I've used any drugs like that or drank. But really, it's just been a process of choosing a different way of life, like choosing orientation around myself instead of escape.
Yeah. That's kind of, I mean, yeah, that in my research of addiction, and I have a pretty strong background of like being around addicts. I've not been addicted to any drugs or alcohol myself, but although I guess you could argue maybe alcohol, but I digress. Uh, is is wanting to escape, which is really interesting to me, like not really knowing that feeling or craving that discomfort of being in my own body or being in my own skin, and wanting to be somewhere else than I am. Like, I've not personally experienced that, so it's really interesting for me to have conversations with you and when with others of that perspective. But what I can definitely relate to is that we all have that on some sort of level, that escapism. So it was actually introduced to me, Jay Shetty. Do you know Jay Shetty?
Hmm.
Yeah. So one of his first books, Think Like a Monk, he wrote about this of like we sit in the office for how many ever days, for at least 5 days a week, for however many days a year, to dreaming about vacation. And then when we're on vacation, we're just dreading going back to the office, and we're really never here. We're never where we are. And that whole perspective really kind of blew my mind at that time, of how deeply present can I be in this moment. And I'm definitely like a future oriented. You were talking about like anxiety and being more future oriented. I do think that we all kind of have a different mode, default mode of being future oriented or past oriented. And I definitely think a lot more of the future, like, what am I doing after this? What am I having for dinner? What's going on tomorrow? What was the rest of my week look like? And I can get very easily in that spiral, but having practices of coming back to the present moment, and really, like you're saying, kind of really sitting in your body. And in the beginning, that is really uncomfortable when you're feeling uncomfortable sensations. Like, I had a whole journey with panic attacks a while ago, and really learning to sit like in your body when you're panicking and like you feel like you're going to pass out and die. It's like, how do I do that? So I'm curious what tools you had found along your journey that really made a big difference in that, like being present and witnessing and coming back to the moment where you are right here and now.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. It's interesting too. It's upon reflection that I'm saying I wanted to escape my body and whatnot. I didn't know that I was doing that
Yeah.
at the time. What would happen is I got more present and I spent more time. And the standard thing is, breath work has been really helpful. Psychedelics in certain moments, certainly. I have a, deep meditation practice, neurofeedback, all kinds of things. I sort of am in the, all hands on deck approach, and
Yeah.
that not one particular thing is going to be helpful for me. So neurofeedback was particularly helpful because I could see the function of my brain, and it had all the hallmarks of someone that had had a lot of trauma, and the brainwave patterns were not in the normal zone, and so I moved
Yeah.
them to that. And then I certainly do breathing exercises. I meditate. I do a lot of sauna and cold plunge and that kind of thing. I'm just orienting around on a daily basis. I'm doing things that are good for me in that zone.
Mm.
So maybe I might not do the breath work today, but I'll do the sauna and cold plunge. I try to meditate on a daily basis, and I think that's really the key. And that's where you observe in meditation. I could see like, oh, I'm pinging almost every moment. It's like, oh, I'm getting this coffee, I'm scrolling, I'm looking at porn, I'm doing this, I'm shopping. It's not all just like drinking and alcohol. When I observe it, it was like, I just do not want to be in this moment. And I'm almost like just in this daze. I don't know if you've ever had this with food, but I just all of a sudden I'd be in my kitchen and halfway through a jar of peanut butter, I remember no decision to do that. I mean, I was watching TV and now I'm just eating and I don't remember anything between the two of those things.
Wow.
And so it's like, oh, okay, like I'm not even at choice. So I
Wow.
think to me, if I like would say like one practice that was extremely helpful for me was when I noticed what I was doing to literally say out loud, pause. And I would try to identify what I'm doing and just to note that like, oh, I've been in a dream state. I didn't know like all of a sudden I'm eating peanut butter or I'm starting to get triggered about like I'm starting to spiral about this conversation like pause like what am I feel like I'm actually sad that person said something mean to me or oh I'm angry and as a guy who didn't have a lot of access to his feelings starting to name them and say them was just super helpful. So
Wow.
yeah, just saying like literally saying the word pause and trying to name what was happening. So helpful for seeing the pattern. It's like, oh, this is what's happening. Like I am getting like I don't like this work thing. I don't really it's stressing me out or whatever. And then all of a sudden I'm doing this thing over and over and over again. And then you start to realize it. And then eventually the pause comes before the behavior, right? Mostly
Mhm.
it's after you're doing it, you're screaming
Mhm.
at someone in traffic, you know,
Mhm.
and then one time you don't, and you're like, oh, I was about to scream at someone in
Wow.
traffic, and
Wow.
then you start to interrupt it, and it felt like a really powerful one to just identify and to just be thankful, like, oh, I'm starting to recognize my patterns.
Wow. Wow. I think that's huge. I mean, what a cool example. I've actually not really considered that of pausing and asking, what emotion am I feeling right now? I did this really cool journey, which there's a lot of similar ones, but this particular one was called a rapid rewire method. And one of part of that is asking yourself, like you have something come up and then asking yourself, what emotion are you feeling? And that was so fucking hard for me. Like I was like, I don't and this is coming from like I consider myself very emotionally intelligent and have like quite depth and I reflect a lot, but to actually name the emotion that you're feeling was really interesting. So I might actually have to practice that just daily that you just said, like, what emotion am I feeling right now? Like pause, what emotion am I feeling? And the cool thing is you're right, it kind of brings that mindfulness to maybe the actions that you do because we have a lot of that of those compensatory strategies in ifs. It's like our firefighters, right, and our protectors, and they kind of work on autopilot. So to really think about, well, this maybe this firefighter part coming up making us, I don't know, head for the liquor store or
Hmm.
head for the online shopping and think and just ask yourself, pause, like what is coming up for me, and then go do the fucking thing. Like I love that you're saying that too, of like I didn't try to stop drinking, I didn't try to stop whatever addiction was going on. It's just bringing more mindfulness to it. Is that correct, or is that me jumping to?
Yeah, that was sort of the thing. I mean, I think for me, and I can't say what everybody's experience was. Is I really realized that probably 95% of the things I was doing was in this subconscious. I'm not even choosing them,
Wow.
and I'm starting to. So how do I expand the number of decisions that I make that become a choice for me as opposed to an automatic program? And there's multiple ways to do that. I mean, of course, there's, the pause is sort of getting into the reflex reaction and trying to create, instead of a reaction to a feeling, a response, right?
Wow.
But then, there is work on like working with your identity and working with therapy and all those things that will help that your actual reflexes, which you think you can't really work with, will be different over time, right? If you start to change your identity and you think more of yourself, then maybe you're not going to have this impulse to like eat or whatever because you've changed the story. So it's kind of like this
Yeah.
cycle of things, and you can work on it on many different levels. But I just never really liked feeling like I wasn't in control of what I was doing. Like I hated it in high school. I had to like get a pass to go to the bathroom, you know. I was like, fuck this, you know. And so like anybody kind of telling me what to do, I rebel against that. And I
Yeah.
just started to use that impulse to work on myself. Like I don't want like, you know, I don't want this like asshole abuser from 50 years ago determining how fat I am right now. Like, no,
Wow.
you know,
I
like
love
I'm going to
that.
start to work on that. And so what I really realized is many of these things that I thought were me were just things that actually could be changed. And they were adaptations that made a lot of sense at my given time.
Mm.
And I was just gonna take the time and effort to like go for them and have enough like respect for myself and love and courage. Like, you know, like you said, it's not easy to sit with panic attacks or whatever.
Oh,
It's a
God.
difficult thing that takes courage,
Mm.
you know. And it also, I think, takes a lot of like love and respect for yourself,
Mm.
because you're saying I'm going to sit with this enough to like that something's going to surface, right? And I'm going to trust myself enough that that's going to be something worthy and good. You
Yeah.
know, I had a lot of what I thought was inside of me was bad. And I didn't want to, you know, I never wanted to be with myself because I thought if what would come out would be just bad at the core. And so as I started to change those stories, I started to work with it more. And I just think we're all so blessed. We all have that. We all have the stories, whether it's trauma. I mean, everybody has their thing, no matter what, no matter who you talk to. And it's just our life's path. And if you give yourself the love and honor and respect to say what's under there is worthy of something, and I'm
Mm.
going to have the courage to go through the shit that we've all been through to get to the real me. You know, I've never talked to anybody who's made that choice and put in the effort who hasn't thought it was the best thing that ever happened to them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I said that like literally almost verbatim on my podcast before. Like the work on yourself is the greatest work that you'll ever do, and that you'll see the biggest rewards, because it really is. And we were kind of talking about this before we recorded. The relationship that you have with yourself influences literally everything. So what you believe you're worthy of attracting, you will attract. So if you don't believe in your core, not in your mind, but in your actual body and like the essence of you, if you believe that you're worthy of $1 million income or this partner that you say that you desire, like whatever you believe you're worthy of, you will attract. And that goes with relationships, with jobs, with houses, with living, like even just your overall demeanor, like all of it starts with yourself. And I would argue that that really is rooted in a regulated nervous system, because your beliefs shift if your nervous system is dysregulated. um I
Yeah, and that, you know, and then what you tell yourself is so important.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying. There's this famous study that this um, I can't remember the university, but they did it on housekeepers in hotels, and essentially they pulled all these women, and they basically said that they were sedentary, right? Like we're sedentary, we work all day, we don't get the recommended amount of exercise.
Mm.
And they took half of them and they told them, yes, you're sedentary. And they took another half and they said, actually, housekeeping like gets you like all of the exercise that you need to be healthy. And here are
Yeah.
the stats, and here's the thing. Nothing else changed. They didn't change anything about the people. And the group that was told that what they were already doing was healthy for them, they lost weight, their heart number. I mean, like they
Oh,
had like
yeah.
a dramatic change in their well-being. And it wasn't because they got more motivated to do something. It was just literally that they thought, oh, what I'm doing now is good. I
Wow.
mean, it's a really incredible. I used to not really like to tell myself that I was something that I wasn't. It felt felt like I was lying to
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
And so now it's sort of like this nuance between like, yes, like I am like like I really care about my physical health. And so to me, if I was really executing that on all the time, that would mean I'd be doing yoga 5 days a week and all that. I'm not always doing that. But if I tell myself, if I'm like, I'm a vital man, like I want vitality, not just for me, but for my kids and my partner and all that, then I'm starting to, and then I end up doing the more things. So I just sort of finesse how I tell myself. So I'm not actually, I don't say I work out 5 days a week
Yeah.
if I don't, but I do say I'm the kind of person who really values working out. And
Yeah.
then if I say that, I'm not lying to myself. But then if I'm the person that values working out, well, then that person should work out, right?
You know what you're
And so,
reminding me of? So in human design, and this is such a small piece of human design. This isn't
mhm,
even like the largest pieces that I typically start with, but we have a manifestation process, which I have a whole spiel on like the word manifestation, but basically like how we call things into existence. And you can either be a non-specific manifester or a specific. So what you just said, like just reminded me of like so much of your this piece of your human design chart. If you're a non-specific manifester, you do really well with like the feelings, with the essence, with so instead of like I want to make $1 million this year, I like, how do you want to feel? Why do you want to make $1 million? Like, what
mm,
is it? You want to have financial security, you want to have financial freedom, you want to have like frivolous money, you want to be able to provide for your kids and like send them to school or college, or you want to whatever it is, like whatever the why is for you, that's what works
mhm,
for specific non-specific manifestors. So where you're saying like it doesn't feel aligned for me to say I work out 5 times a week, but to say, yeah, like I have vitality. I'm devoted to my wellness and my well-being. I am like I care about my body and I take care of my body. Like those are all the essences of
mm,
what you want to bring in, and that totally makes sense for a non-specific manifester because it's really rooted in like how do you want to feel, and what
mhm,
would having that thing, whatever it is, like why work out 5 days a week? What's the point of that? Can you still be healthy if you are not going to the gym or not doing yoga 5 days a week? But maybe it is just like focusing on your nutrition or focusing on your sleep one day. Like, I got a really solid night sleep. That is vital. That
mm.
is vitality and that's wellness. So, anyway, just bringing in a little bit of your human design, but a really great
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, I really like that because it is true with like so with vitality you're talking about and you mentioned sleep like sometimes it's sleep is way more important than working out if I haven't been so it's more
Amen.
like this is what I want to be and I do like the feeling thing because I orient it around numbers and money a lot and I just know from my own achievements and many, many other people, even people who are billionaires that I'm friends with, there is no number that does anything for you psychologically. But there is like the feeling and that, and those things that you mentioned, I mean, all those things, putting my kids through college, taking care of them, having a little frivolous money, being able to donate and those things. And what does that really make me feel like beyond that?
Mhm.
I mean, it gives my life some sort of meaning that's outside of me, right?
Yeah.
I don't, all those things that you happen to mention that I resonated with, most of them, they weren't like, I want to buy myself the flyest wardrobe in town, although I do have a pretty fly
We
wardrobe. I'm
do
not
love
gonna
the
say,
shirt. We love the shirt.
I'm not gonna say there's anything wrong with that. But all the things you said were really to be of service to other people
Yeah.
and they resonated to me. I mean, maybe we have some similarities, but like that's what I always wanted money for. Just to like, I'll fly my friend out here and we'll do
Yeah.
something, or have that experience. So yeah, I really do think putting the feelings for me, and maybe that's part of my chart. Am I a non-specific manifester? Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and super interesting too, just in general, I really, I mean, I love your chart because in human design, are you familiar with the chakra system?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. A little
okay.
bit. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I know the
Yeah,
concepts and the
generally,
chakras and all
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So in human design, it pulls from the chakra system where we have different energy centers, which represent like we have like a crown energy center, which would be like the crown chakra in this chakra system.
Hmm.
And we can have these centers either defined, which means we have really consistent access to this energy, or undefined, which means that we have inconsistent access to this energy, and or other people's energy can really affect like these energy centers. So you have quite what we would call like an open chart where you have more undefined centers versus defined centers. So that like feeling like what am I really feeling in my body? One of the questions for all of my open centers that I ask myself is this emotion or is this feeling mine? And I think that's a
Mm.
really cool question because we all, I mean, a very, very small percentage of people have all defined centers. I've only met, I think, two in my entire life, or my human design career, I guess. But we all, so generally, we all have at least one open center. And to ask yourself, like, is what I'm feeling mine or is it someone else's? And I don't know if you've felt that a lot in your life, but I certainly feel in my journey, like I would maybe feel like super anxious, or I would feel like really like buzzy, like just like really like all over the place. And it was in the reflection where I was like, oh, that was actually somebody else's energy, like the person that
Mm.
I was working with. Do you ever feel that in your body or no?
Well, it's interesting because I spent so much of my life on that addiction and not just substances, like you're saying, shopping, scroll,
Yeah.
whatever it was. It's really been until the past several years and being with my partner who's like, you're an extremely sensitive person. You're
Hmm.
extremely sensitive to this and that, but I never allowed I mean, it's hard to be sensitive if you're high all the time or you're this or that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that I definitely have a lot of sensitivity. And I think I've developed a lot of like protections around myself
Yeah.
to like operate in the world. And, it's funny because if like my high school friends or people growing up with me, they definitely would have been like, Steve's the most sensitive dude in the world. Like, that's not what I was putting out there. But at this age, yeah, totally. And,
Yeah.
it's something that I really value. And, it's funny, I feel like I cultivated it like watching rom coms
Yeah.
because I didn't have access to all these feelings. And it was like in
Wow.
a dramatic environment, it was safer for me to like experience them and
Yeah.
get familiar with them and feel
Mhm.
them. And, I remember my daughter, Athena, who, she's like, oh, we're going to watch another Daddy Cries movie.
Oh.
But like before I could get to the point, I think, of doing it in real life with like other humans in reality, like I tested it out in drama. And I
Mm.
actually think that was like a really good strategy for me,
Yeah.
because the stakes weren't as high and I
Mhm.
could tell myself it wasn't real, and you could get into a bunch of different things. And it was helpful for me to like learn about navigating emotions and like what it was like to be other people. And
Mm.
yeah, and so yeah, I do think I'm a sensitive person.
Mm, yeah. And also with like the rom-coms and stuff too, I think that it also there's like some safety in that, you're right, where like you can feel the emotion, but it's not necessarily yours. Like it's not, that's not your life that the actor is going through. And there's pieces that you relate to that probably is what triggers the emotion. Like that's where we typically get really emotional, is because we can really see ourselves in that person. But at the end
Hmm.
of the day, you're right. It's not yours. It's not you. It's not your life. So there is that like safety in that. But I am really curious. You said that you kind of have like built up. Do you feel that those like protection mechanisms, are you saying that is a good thing or a bad thing?
uh I think it's I think it's probably a good thing.
Mm,
I think that now, because I am open to experiencing emotions and being with
mm,
people, and I'm very vulnerable. Like, you don't need to go out into the world and pick up everybody's shit, at like
right.
Starbucks or whatever, and
Yeah.
so I think there's a balance to play of like being sensitive and just understanding like the appropriate time and place for that, and
Mm,
having the ability to work with yourself enough to so I don't think they're automatic the way they were before. They're more like, like I was saying, trying to generate choice. Like, I
yeah.
don't I don't need to be fully open to everything in this trip to Safeway, whatever. I can
Yeah.
just go get my groceries and move on.
Let me get my groceries and go home.
Yeah, yeah.
What tools do you have? I'm curious because like I definitely feel the same way. I feel that I absorb people's emotions and energy pretty easily. And so I've also cultivated my own like shielding practices and like my own tools. But I'm curious, what is it, like a mindset thing? Is it something that you tell yourself? Is it a somatic tool?
Mostly what it is I try to have a lot of like love for people, and know like everybody has a story, everybody has this
Mm.
like burden,
Mm.
and then to like, so that it helps me, like, I was joking about like screaming at people in traffic. Like, I
Mhm.
could be like, well, what if that person's mom just died, or what,
Wow.
whatever, like that kind of thing. But then there is, and that's theirs. Like, I have mine, like I have what's mine to carry and what is my responsibility. And my responsibility in the way that I orient it is, I want to be loving to you, but I don't need
Mm.
to take your shit on. Like, that's your stuff.
Wow.
So it's sort of a thing of like, who do I want to be in this moment?
Mm.
Like, I want to be a loving, caring person, and I want to care for people. And when it's the appropriate move, I want to jump in and help. But
Mm.
like, when I'm out in the world or whatever, I just want to be like, okay, like that, I'm sorry if that's happening. And that's Hannah's to deal with. That's not
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
And so draw that boundary, because I think when you're sensitive, you can get wrapped up into thinking like everyone's problem is your problem.
Mm.
And to really like, like, it's not even good. Like, you can't solve my problems. I can't solve your problems. Like,
Right.
like, how can I be in the circumstance? How can you be the woman you want to be? How can I be the man that I want to be and feel good about it?
Mm.
And sometimes it's just like recognizing that people have their own path.
Mm. Mm. How do you feel that this has changed, like this perspective has changed the way that you relate, whether in like your partnership, your marriage, your kids, that you relate to other people?
Yeah, well, I mean, my whole, the way that I am has changed dramatically, because at the end of the day, for the vast majority of my life, the people who knew me didn't really know me. So I was putting out a version of myself that wasn't true, and somebody wise might be able to see that, right? So
Mm.
my men's group guys for years were telling me I was sad, and I was just like, you're not very good at this. I'm not sad,
Wow.
but so like, what's happening, and I think it creates some level of distrust, right? If I'm meeting you and I'm bubbly and happy, but you're sensing that I'm sad, I think there's a deep down inside, can I trust this person, right?
Wow.
And so now I think I'm a lot more authentic, and I then have deeper, closer relationships, because I don't, I'm not hiding as much. And
Mm.
it's all like wrapped up in all this work, right? So, I used to have such difficulty saying I was sorry. I don't know if you've ever dated a dude like this, right?
Mm.
But like, I'm sure no woman has ever dealt with this. But like,
Never.
but like, the thing that I realized about it, and I could give both the women that I couldn't do this for, empathy, and myself in the same circumstance. I was, oftentimes what I was saying I'm sorry for was something related to my dysregulated nervous system. Like, I would blow up, or I would defend, or something. and I thought that was me. I didn't think it was like an adaptation or something. So
Wow.
basically, like, and and of course I said I was sorry. I'd say, Hannah, I'm sorry, and then I'd make you wrong about something.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I got this whole story about it, and really, what I realized is the reason why it was so difficult then was because I was really saying, I'm sorry for the person who I am at the core, and that I'm wrong,
Wow.
because I conflated my adaptations and my behaviors related to those adaptations to the core of my being.
Mm,
And really, as I learned, no, that's not what's happening. Then I could say, like, to you, like, Hannah, like, I didn't act the way I want to act, like, as a person
mm,
yesterday. Like, I got dysregulated. That's not who I am.
mm.
I'm sorry for that. I'm not telling you I'm sorry for me being a bad person at my core. It's
Yeah.
a lot harder to say. And so those things like create safety, right? Like, if then you can apologize. And I'm oftentimes much better the next day, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Like, sometimes, when I've have dysregulated moments or whatever, I don't even notice them,
Mm,
right? And then it's the next morning, I'm like, oh man, that could have landed, on
mm,
somebody like that. And then I can go through that thing. So then I think my relationships are deeper. People know me better because,
mm,
I also had look, I mean, I was a dude that was like I was getting a lot of outside ratification for what was happening in my life. I mean, I
mm,
had businesses, I had beautiful partners, I lived all over the world. So if I wanted to put up a little front of, I'm more than you, I could do it pretty
mhm,
successfully. And so now it's just a different thing. My people know that like, I'm falling down all the time, and
mm.
I'm trying to do the right thing. And so then I just have a closer relationship with them, and I don't feel bad about saying I'm sorry because I'm not telling myself I'm bad.
Yeah.
And I also give myself a lot of, like, when I was doing that before, it wasn't like intentional, right?
Wow.
And so that's the thing, like, don't be around somebody that's impacting you negatively, and establish your boundaries and all that stuff. But I also don't think they're trying to do that. Nobody's
Mm,
trying to act like in a way that's hurtful and all that.
mm.
They just don't know how to deal with what they have to deal with.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a reflection on them, and again, not saying that they're a bad person, but right, they're dealing with what they're dealing with in the best way that they know how in that moment. And I think that, like, that even sentence has also given me a lot of permission for myself to forgive these mistakes or choices that I made in the past. Like, I still made the best decision that I could have with the tools that I had at that time, because hindsight, of course, is 2020. And like we talked about in the beginning, like, a lot of this insight that you have is based off of reflection. You didn't know it in the moment. And so giving yourself that grace of, I did the best that I could in the moment that I was triggered or dysregulated, and then here's how I could handle it differently too next time, like a little go back to the drawing
Yeah, I
board.
wonder with that forgiveness, like, if you can learn that tool on yourself, right? Because you have to be kind of more calmly regulated to even forgive yourself,
Mhm.
and you sort of know the story, right? And you can have empathy. Like, I don't think you could necessarily forgive somebody else unless you can do it for yourself, right? And
100%.
I just think of the past, it's like it is over. There's no reason to mourn it or think it shouldn't have happened this way or that. It's like
Yeah.
I have it to learn from potentially, and I don't want to repeat my mistakes, but and maybe I think we're both future oriented. Like, in the
Mhm.
Enneagram, I'm a 7, which is like fear based and future looking.
Okay.
But I don't worry about the past, and
Yeah.
especially now, I just know, like, I was dealing with a lot for a long time. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things that I would never, like, behaviors I would never do now that I
Mm.
did before.
Mhm.
but I'm not going to say I'm a shitty person because I had sex with this dude's girlfriend. I mean,
Right.
yeah, like that happened a long time ago, and I was dealing with a lot of things,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't do that now. And you got to say you're sorry and move on, but you can't just like beat yourself up your whole life for things you did
Yeah.
in the past. You're never going to move forward, and you're never going to be able to forgive anybody else. If you
Yeah.
can't forgive yourself, then how can you forgive somebody else? And we're all going to injure each other and make mistakes.
Yeah. You really can't, like, there's that whole you can't meet someone as you can only meet someone as deeply as you've met yourself, and that totally relates to forgiveness and emotional capacity and capacity to sit in uncomfortable emotions and situations, like, going back to breath work, I always tell, the my participants, like, there's no emotion that I haven't seen and that I haven't sat with, and that also includes myself, like being able to sit in anger, frustration, grief, rage, sadness, whatever it is. I've sat with myself in that. And then I've also been able to then I've been able to hold people in that as well. But I mean, it does, it comes back to yourself. Like your relationship to yourself is the most important work you'll ever do because I mean, this is just another example. It's your ability to relate to people. And I really like the way that yeah, you're able to reflect on like how it's changed, how your work has changed your inner work has changed your ability to relate to others.
I mean, I would, people ask me what's different about this, and it's really every moment of my life is so much radically changed than it was, say, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's incomprehensible, the change, and it's all for the good, and it wasn't always easy. And
Mhm.
I'm certainly like, there's all kinds of ways I'm not like, living in my highest self. But, this, as somebody who focused so much externally,
Mm.
and I still do it, like I'm starting this new career, and it's like a constant sort of thing between like, am I putting out there what is like just truly my voice, or
Mhm.
am I trying to get people to follow me and whatnot? And really,
Mm.
if I reflect on this, I would say I've been starting to put content out into the world that I started last September, and I was just very uncomfortable with myself and my
Mm.
voice, and I offloaded it to people that I hired, like, and they would tell me what to do or how to make it or how to make it look.
Mm.
And I think I mean, it was, of course, the core. I mean, it was true things that were being said, but it's not the way I would have said them, and
Yeah.
not the way I would have had it look. And just more and more, I'm trying to get to the point, like, does this represent like what I'm actually trying to say?
Wow.
And then if anybody watches it, well, then they can fucking watch it if they
Great.
want,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of thing. And then that's the standard. And it's sort of like what we were talking about, like what is mine to be? Like
Yeah.
like I try to look in circumstances where I'm dealing with other people's behavior, like I might be trying to move my son or daughter in a direction that I think is helpful to them,
Mm.
but I can't get attached to them moving in that direction. I have to
Mm.
be oriented around, did I show up as a dad in a way that was helpful?
Hmm.
And even if they completely reject and they go another way and it's harder, well, that's theirs to live.
Yeah.
Like, did I show up in a manner in which I can be proud of myself?
Wow.
Am I the kind of person that I want to be? Like my partner and I, her brother is has had heavy addiction and was homeless, and we're kind of in the process of getting him here and help. And it's been a real lesson in like what is ours to
Yeah.
do, how do we operate in this. Like, we're going to be caring, loving, good people, but we're not going to give you money to be a drug addict either. But like, and
Yeah.
so it's like, and then what is yours to
Yeah.
hold? Like, you need to do certain things, and if you do it, and it's not always easy, especially when you're talking about siblings and
Mm.
kids and all that, and you
Yeah.
have to say like, oh, my kid might go down a bad road, like I can't
Yeah.
stop that.
Yeah.
I can be a man that I can respect in the morning, And that's, that's what I try to orient around. And, stakes are higher with people you love, but I
Mm.
think it's like, what is mine in this situation and what is theirs? It's a good thing to think about, right?
Such a good question. And where is the line between enabling and empowering? Like in those
Yeah.
situations and parenting. I mean, in so many situations, like where is the line? Where am I enabling this person? Where and in relationships, like even partnerships. And I don't know if you felt this, but like definitely I have big like mom energy, like mothering energy, and like I'm just naturally a nurturer, which is beautiful, but I've really had to learn that question like the hard way. I've definitely enabled a lot in my previous relationships where uh I learned that in retrospect, of course, that I was actually not helping. Like it came from the best of intentions and I just want the best for you, but I'm actually enabling you in these situations rather than empowering you. And when I'm enabling you, I'm actually keeping you from you living your truth and you being autonomous and really like empowered and living in your power and your integrity. And that's like such a hard for me, that's been a really hard lesson to learn that I'm probably still learning, honestly.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit, because it's funny what popped into my mind when you kept saying enabling and I kept hearing disabling. And I
Ooh.
think if you just maybe reframed it, I'm disabling the person. Because really, I think when you're saying enabling, and I would challenge a little bit, like what did you not want to feel there? Because
Mm,
sometimes it's hard to say the thing that the other person needs to hear. Like,
yeah.
no, I'm not giving you this anymore. I'm not doing that. And are you not doing that because you just don't want to feel what it feels like to say no to somebody that you care
Mm,
about? And so then is it not that loving, right? It's more
mm,
like a fear-based thing. And like,
mm,
and there's a lot of nuance between it and it's
mm,
tricky and it happens automatically, but I think it's really worthy of like, because I orient a lot, and maybe it's because but around courage and that kind of thing.
mm,
So did I, in that circumstance, was I not exhibiting courage when I enabled this person because I was really kind of being like, I just didn't want to feel bad by telling them no.
yeah.
And then, and so then was I really like actually being weak for them and for me,
Wow.
and not being loving. It's coming from a loving place, like yes, we want them to feel good, but feeling good in the future doesn't necessarily mean feeling good in the present.
Mm, mm. That's tough. Like I know my mom, she would always like when she would say like not let us go to a party or not let us get a cell phone or whatever, and my sister and I would push back. She said our whole childhood, I'm not here to be your friend, I'm here to be your mom, which is you can pick that apart, but the part that I really appreciate and value in her is that she saw that like that short-term discomfort of your kids not being happy with your decision, but it really led to a lot of like when I went off to college, there was so many tools that I had that I didn't realize that I had that other people don't have. Like, I mean, very simple ones of like knowing how to do my own laundry, know how to cook, know how to eat healthy. But yeah, like that, I'm not here and now we're friends. Like then we had to unlearn that because as an adult it's like okay, now you're still my mom but you are here to be my friend and a more
Yeah, and
like
that's where she's got to kind of back off, and it's kind of funny. I have one of my best friends from high school started a program in Hawaii called Pacific Quest,
okay.
and it's an intervention program for at-risk youth,
Mm,
and it's very well known. There's 100+ employees. It caters to a lot of really rich people. It's expensive, but it's for kids that are like exhibiting some pretty heavy teenage behaviors. And
sure.
as I was starting to have kids and ask him, like, what do you see? Like, what, he's like, I'll tell you, we have two kinds of parents. Now of course these are oftentimes pretty wealthy people. We have just the absent people who are not paying attention,
Yeah.
and we have the friends. And
Mm,
he's like, your kids do not want a friend, and they will continue to push your boundaries until you finally set them,
yeah.
even if that means becoming a full-on heroin addict. That's what you need to do. You need to set boundaries, and you need to be
Wow.
their parent. And then, and so I really took that to mind. I mean, I wasn't always capable of doing it well, but
Mm,
I did have that notion. And then another person who was really impactful in my life, he worked at a home for battered women, and I asked him like, what, this was like a Christian place. I was like, you've seen so many dysfunctional relationships. What advice would you give me? And he
mm,
was like, make sure that you put your relationship with their mother at the top of the
mm.
heap, right? Like, you guys are tight and in loving, and they nest under that. If you
Yeah.
start to put them on top, everybody gets confused, and it's
Yeah.
not good for them. And both of them are kind of saying the same thing. Like, you're not there. You're like, you'll end up your kids' friends, maybe. I mean, honestly, kids like have their own,
Yeah.
I mean, they're their own people, but like,
Yeah.
you're here to kind of get them out into the world so they can eat right and do their
Mm.
laundry and all the things that you had when you rolled into college, right?
Yeah.
Like, you had some skills
Yeah.
and some life lessons, and there's plenty of time to be friends. But like, are you really friends with a 10-year-old when you're 38? I mean, you
Yeah.
wouldn't be friends with any other 10-year-old, right? Like,
Right.
but you might be friends when you're 50, and with a 24-year-old who's
Yeah.
kind of an adult. So that's
Yeah.
the time to shift into friendship
Yeah.
and maybe drop the parenting. I don't know. Is it, my kids are 20, I mean, 20 and 18, so I'm still fairly parent role. Has it
Mm.
been easy for your mom to drop her mommy role? And
I don't think so. I
yeah,
think that, I mean, we work really hard. We've kind of mindfully put this at the forefront, but I do, like, there's definitely been situations, and I lived away. Like, I lived away for about 10 years. I went to college. I got my master's degree. And then I moved, like, to outside of New York. So I was away from my family for about 10 years, and I came home. I'm very close with my family, but to be in, like, the physical proximity, I moved back about 2 years ago to the same town that my family lives in. So really, over the past 2 years, it's also been like relearning dynamics, and right, like, what is, like, she's still my mom, but I don't I don't need to be parented so much. Like, I'm an adult. I'm 31 now, and I parent myself in a way. So it is finding that line between but I don't know, I'm not a parent, so I don't, like, I can't speak on that, but I would imagine that it's difficult to take that parent hat off, and can you ever fully take it off? Like, I'm still ultimately her child, so can we just be friends? I would argue no. I mean, it's still a parent-daughter relationship. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I'm not there at the timing of my parent.
Yeah,
Although it's shifting, but I would say that just as important to think like, I'm not here to be your friend at a certain age, is I'm also not here to still parent you in the way that I did. Like,
right,
of course, wisdom and experience and all that, but this
right.
is for me, like, now what we're saying is I have a pattern of behavior that I've exhibited for 20 years, and I need to shift it for the good of my kid.
Yeah,
And
which is
that's something
wild.
I think parents like can work on and think about just as much. As I think
Yeah,
it's easier to be friends with your
yeah,
kids than it is to do the way that your mom parented. And
mm,
so this is, maybe it's easier to stick with those old patterns as as they're 31,
mm.
and you have to say no, like, this also is not appropriate.
Right. Yeah.
Because like, you're like a full-on adult now,
Mhm.
and honestly, you should make some mistakes. You don't have to
Mhm.
have everything be, I
All
mean, headed
perfect.
off at the pass and
Oh,
all
I made
that kind of stuff.
plenty of mistakes. But no, that is a really interesting conversation to have, that other side of it, because it is, I think that again, not knowing from experience, but from observation, it is much easier to be a friend to your children than to be a parent to your children when they're children. And then, yeah, it's like I'm in that opposite role now, that opposite chapter of my life of, okay, now how do we reverse that role back to being friends and not the like traditional, you can't tell me what to do now. I'm not 18 or 17 or 16 anymore. So super interesting, but just like relationships in general, and building your relationship, and coming from that place of stability and rootedness and groundedness, I think is really the root of all relationships, no matter where you are in your chapter, whether it's like a 20-year wedding anniversary or your kids are turning, 20 and going off to college. It's really
Yeah, I mean,
wild.
I think there's some level of skills with it. What comes up for me is I think you hear this as a guy so often, like, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen to me, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And I think it's, honestly, the reason why we try to solve the problems is our inability to deal with our own nervous systems. Because when
Wow.
we're hearing it, we're getting dysregulated. So it's like, I'm not even trying to help you. I'm trying to quiet my nervous system by doing something you don't want, right? Like that's what
Wow.
I think happens. And as I've gotten a little more wise about that, and I'm really good at helping with people's problems. Like I'm very good at that.
Yeah.
So I think the move, if I do it well with my partner, is do you want me to just like hear you out here, or do you want to try to like solve this problem?
I love that. I originally heard that, I'm pretty sure from Jay Shetty, actually,
Oh,
and
yeah?
he said that. He said him and his wife will come to him and tell him a problem, like, she's all flustered, whatever. And his first question is, do you want me to listen and hold space, or do you want me to listen to respond and have like help you with this problem? Like, do you want constructive feedback, or do you want me to hold space? And I've told all of my friends that, like, I think is one of the most powerful questions. And I actually use that in my friendships. They'll come to me and I'm like, do you want, asking permission? Like, do you want a response to this? Do you want my input and my feedback, or do you just want me to listen? Because I'm more than happy to just listen, like, and be like, yeah, absolutely, fuck that dude, he's so wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I could do that for sure too. But
And it shows a
asking,
certain level of respect for the person, and it
yeah,
might be like a wise thing for your mom to think about, right? Like,
I
what
love
a
that.
good tool. That I think it would be a really good tool in shifting that dynamic. Like,
Mm, hmm,
okay, I mean, of course you listen to your kids, but you're much more about guiding them and solving their
yeah,
problems. And now it's like, okay, this is a way for it, I'm getting Hannah's buy-in as to whether I'm being the nice listener,
mm,
I'm being more of a parent and helping you solve things here. And then
love
it's
that.
like I don't, it's like if you're really doing it for your child, then you can respect their decision on that. Like,
Mm,
no, I don't need your advice on this. I want to make my own. I just need someone to talk to.
mm,
And then that means shut the fuck up and listen.
yeah. Which is
Which
hard, and that's a
not
really
so
cool
easy, no.
perspective that you just shared. It's more like in, like, the traditional, like, boyfriend-girlfriend or husband-wife perspective, it's more that they have difficulty, like, they're trying to regulate their own emotions and their own nervous system. I never thought of it that way. That's really a cool,
Oh, that's
powerful
totally what I
perspective.
was doing so much of the time. I mean,
Huh.
it's an instinct too, but like basically what you're saying is if you're like, oh, I can solve this for you, is I can change the circumstances so you don't have to feel the feelings that you're feeling
Mm,
now. And really, I think the move is let's feel the feelings that are happening now,
wow.
and then let's try to change the circumstances because there's enough fucking suffering in the world, right? We don't
Yeah,
have to, we can make things better for ourselves,
yeah,
but the process of letting things come out and surface is so valuable for
mm,
everybody involved,
mm,
and you don't want to skip that. And I know for me personally, much of the time when I was trying to solve, what I was really saying is, I can't handle sitting here hearing what you're saying
yeah.
because it dysregulates me too much.
It's wild. That's a really, really powerful perspective that you kind of uncovered, and I'm taking that nugget with me.
That's what it's
Absolutely.
all about. We're taking
Yeah.
each other's stuff, Hannah, and
So
using
many
it for good.
nuggets. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, and I know that we definitely went a little bit over. So I want to wrap up just one final question. But before the final question, where can people learn more from you? Where can people connect with you? Share your podcast one more time.
Yeah, so my podcast is called The Neuro's Journey. It's kind of like the hero's journey into your own mind.
Love it.
I have a website of that same name. So that has where I'm speaking. I have a coaching practice that's filled up now, but I'll do that and my podcast. And the podcast is in all the spots, right? The YouTube, Apple, Spotify. And, if there's anything that you're interested in, I mean, I'm here, if someone wants to DM me or reach out, I'm happy to talk with people. And at this point, just trying to be of service and use, my lived experience, and also the way that I've done things in life. I was a money manager for a long time. What I did was I looked out into the field of all this data and I said, like, these 5 or 6 things are meaningful.
Hmm.
And then I put that onto money and systems, and I know I'm good at that because I was good at that. And so the same thing with like life, I've been like, okay, there's so many different things, but I have a sense these 5 or 6 things work. And then I've gone and figured out the science behind them. And so
Wow.
a lot of the things that I talk about, all of them have a basis in scientific fact.
Mm.
And yeah, I just love talking about it and being a part of it. So I would love for people to sign in. I mean, there's so much negativity, right? Like,
Mm.
we've had such a fun, positive discussion, and
Yeah.
you could listen to this whole podcast and feel uplifting, and at the least, you're not going to hate somebody else. At the
Yeah.
end of it, it seems like that's what half the content in the world is about.
Mm.
So, like, let's put more out there that's like positive and loving.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. This kind of might play into your answer, but my last question is, if you could have people have one feeling from experiencing your work, what would that feeling be?
Hmm. Well, I think it would be love. And I know that's a very diffuse thing, but as we talked about it, I think love for themselves,
Yeah.
to forgive themselves, to believe in themselves that what is deep down in there is worthy of something beautiful,
Mm.
and that it can come out, and that you expressing yourself and being yourself is the greatest thing that you could ever be. And at some point you have to trust and love and honor yourself enough to say, like, there's something in me that is of worth. And I believe that that's true of every person.
Mm.
So I hope that people would feel that when they interact with me and listen to my content and hear me on your podcast.
Mm. I love that. Thank you so much, Steve. It was so good to have you.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for being here. Truly, your support and love is the foundation of this community and this podcast. If you find yourself in a season of life ready to explore your inner landscape deeper, or perhaps you feel like you've tried all the things and nothing has worked, here's your gentle invitation to come back home. Align and Embody is my signature coaching container that is created to explore our soma, our living wholeness. Perhaps the answers you seek truly do live within. You just need to learn the communication of your body. Align and Embody combines the 3 pillars of my business: human design, somatic breathwork, and cycle alignment. Head to the link in this description to learn more, or better yet, reach out on Instagram @_journey-to-well. I'd be honored to connect with you. Be well on this journey, my friend. Talk soon.